Welcome back to Gun Soy Tube. I'm your host, as always, Soleith, and today we are talking about rifles for civilians, preppers, prepared citizens. Anyways, what we're going to do is we're going to work from the front to the back of the rifle, talking about the different components and what is required for civilian riflemen. So first off, I'm going to state about not this rifle in particular, but just rifles in general. You always want your rifles to be of at least I would call a fighting grade quality. You don't want to buy components from lower end manufacturers such as Anderson and slap a rifle together and say, oh, this is going to be my fighting weapon. More often than not, those companies and low-end manufacturers have a lot of QC issues. It's well documented at this point. There's really no need to buy from those manufacturers unless you're just buying something to goof around with. So, unfortunately, for most Reddit tier gun collectors, the AR-15 is the rifle for any disaster / SHTF. Primarily the reason that is 5.56/223 holds most of the market share of ammunition that is produced in America. Not only that, the parts are far easier to come across compared to most other rifles, and even you go into most gun stores or pawn shops, you can find things like grip modules, triggers, low receivers, etc. So if you have somebody that you know that is incredibly autistic and stubborn about their choice in their, AUG, FAMAS, whatever other 5.56 equivalent rifle, all you have to do is point to the fact that they're never going to come across replacement parts for that weapon system in the wild. It's just not going to happen. And this also goes for, I guess, any other, SKS, AK guy that that just, in your group that really just wants to rock something in 7.62 by 39. We're going to start here at the muzzle device. I typically like to rock a A2 birdcage. And what I hate to see from civilian riflemen or people that I've trained with, them using linear compensators. Not only do I hate you, your teammates hate you, their eardrums hate you, your mom hates you, and moreover, everybody that comes into a 50-mile radius of you hates you. It's just that compensators, their benefits from reduction in muzzle climb, I think kinda is outweighed by the fact that you have that increased sound signature, and especially the increased light signature / flash coming from the muzzle. Especially when you're comparing it to even something simple like an A2 birdcage, which are relatively quite cheap. I think they're just superior for most people's applications. Now, if you're putting something on like a race gun, of course, bang away with your compensator. But for a fighting rifle, I think a flash hider for that signature reduction is going to suit most people best. Especially if you're on a budget. If you aren't as constricted with your budget, investing in a suppressor is a good idea. Not only, the obvious reduced sound signature, but the reduced light signature coming from the muzzle of suppressors for most suppressors is quite good, especially when you're comparing it to either a compensator or no muzzle device at all. Next, a heavily contested topic, barrel length and barrel profile. For most people, either a government profile or a mid-weight profile is going to suit them quite well. Or, if you can afford it, a Criterion core profile has served me quite well on this rifle. 16 inches is, generally speaking, going to be the best length in terms of getting FPS out of the grain weights you're using, and a compromise in maneuverability. Now, some people love to say that they want to rock that 20-inch barrel, but we live in and or around buildings. You're going to have to maneuver through them, and people always point out that, you know, Marines in, I think it was a Fallujah or something, had 20-inch barrels and they were clearing rooms, but I don't see any reason to make it harder on yourself just for a couple extra feet in FPS. Now, moving on to handguards, honestly, just pick a reputable company. Between M-Lock, Keymod, and Quad Rail, it really doesn't make that much a difference. Now we will move on to flashlights. So, flashlights, you need them on your weapon. It gets dark outside, so you can see what you're shooting at, essentially. So you're not just shooting at sounds. I feel like that is somewhat self-explanatory, but you see it all the time. People not having flashlights on their duty weapons. Next is a good old rifle sling. If you intend on carrying your rifle around for a decent amount of time, your arms will get tired. So invest in either a decent padded sling or a sling that has just a little bit wider nylon, because it helps distribute that force along your shoulders. Next, we will talk about optics. So this topic is a lot more user preference based. So you can see here I have a LVPO with a Aimpoint T2 red dot sitting on top. So this is my preferred setup, but for most people, I can tell you, whether they pick a Prism, LVPO, or a red dot with magnifier, as long as you have at least some magnification, you're going to probably be okay. Now, there are ways to optimize those setups. For instance, you know, rocking an LVPO with a red dot on top, or if you're rocking something like an ACOG, mounting a micro dot on top of it can be beneficial, especially if you plan on using night vision. As we work our way back, we'll talk about the charging handle, I guess. Ambidextrous charging handles, you don't really need one. I got this one for cheap, used from a friend. All I will say is they are nice to have. Same thing with ambidextrous controls. I don't have that on this rifle, but they are a nice luxury. Then we'll talk about the stock here on the end. I mean, really, there's not much to say about it other than just buy a decent stock from a reputable company, even if it's just something simple like this Magpul MOE. And as we wrap it up here, I think the last thing I'm going to talk about too is the grip. There are some grips that have a more neutral, I guess you could say, grip position, and those can be beneficial, especially if you are in the prone. This Magpul, I think it's the K2 Plus, something like that. Yeah, it's the MOE K2. This one's worked out pretty well for me. They're fairly cheap. They're $6. Just get something that, you know, fits your preferences. And otherwise, I think that is it as far as this rifle is concerned.